Well, today me and Ryan are back at it with another video, not a podcast, but just kind of an idea that we thought of. I think Ryan actually did it last year by himself, but I'm gonna chime in today, and it's the top 10 remaining free agents left on the board. There's still a lot of guys. It's kind of been a very slow off season, to be honest with you. It's been really boring. I mean, I don't know why. I think GMs are probably on vacation right now. I don't know.
All the money's dried up pretty quick. I think this year being the last year of the kind of flat cap, if you will, has kind of played into that. Some teams just, and then also like some teams that would have been big players, like I think Minnesota and Boston, like they've been handicapped because of buyouts and cap penalties from previous years. So that might play into it, right? But I think that's why we've seen a couple of really good players still kind of just on the outside looking in because they didn't get a deal done July 1st, and now they're kind of left holding the bag because there's just not enough money to go around from teams that those guys would probably be interested in playing for.
Yeah. So yeah, let's just get started right away. Number 10, Matt Dumba. There's I mean like Matt Dumba hasn't had the greatest last few years in Minnesota, as you see here. Only 14 points. He's fallen down the depth chart. I think like even Kalen Addison was playing ahead of him at some point. Before then, 27 points, 21 points. He isn't really great defensively. Um, I think he'll probably likely get a 1 year deal, maybe on a show me contract. But I would have expected Matt Dumba to go like get signed by now, especially since right hand defensemen are, they're kind of a hot commodity nowadays. It's hard to find good right hand defensemen.
It's really kind of fallen off a cliff the last years. He still had a pretty high usage for Minnesota. You can see his average
Yeah,
time on ice. Like that's like a legit like second or third defenseman in terms of ice time. So clearly Minnesota still used him a lot, but his returns were not that great. But you'd think that given his average time on ice and Minnesota being a pretty good team last year, that he would have had some suitors. But evidently maybe it was just a case of him overplaying his hand,
hmm
thinking kind of like Klingberg a year ago, just thinking that he was gonna get like a 7 by 5 or like a 6.5 by 5, and like the market just completely turned away and was like, no, we're not paying you that. Um, Predictions: we both had the same team,
yeah.
but very different terms. So I mean, you can go first with yours.
Well, I mean we've actually predicted Arizona when we did our video last week, and there's been some rumors that Arizona might be bringing in a guy like Matt Dumba, and Arizona already signed Jason Zucker this offseason. They brought back Nick Bugstad, they brought in Alex Kerfoot, but they still really need it's fine. They still really need work on the right hand defense. They got Sean Jersey, they brought Troy Stetcher in, and like that's about it. And for a very young Coyotes team, especially a very very young decor, you need more of a veteran presence, someone who's played in the league for a while to help develop your guys. And I don't think you want Sean Jersey playing on your first pair, especially since he's only 24 years old. I think you want to play on your second pair, a lot of power play time, and then when he's 26, 27, 28 years old, then he's ready to take the reins as that first pair defenseman. So Matt Dumba would slot into the first pair there, play 25, 26, 27 minutes a night, top PK time, and at a 1 year deal, you can retain 50% of his salary, which will be 2.5 million, and that would be very valuable to a contender at the deadline. And like I just mentioned, right hand defenseman, teams love those. It's hard to find a cheap right hand defenseman. If you're gonna get Matt Dumba at 2.5 million at the deadline, and it's gonna cost you maybe like a second and the good prospect, I think that's worth it. So I think Arizona makes a lot of sense here, especially at that contract.
Those reasons, it makes sense for Matt Dumba, right? But I think the difference is I think Arizona, based off the signings that they've made so far this term, this offseason, as well as buyouts of Cassian and Namath, and the fact that they haven't really taken on any more bad contracts early on. Like I'm shocked they haven't taken on like a Matt Murray kind of contract yet. It kind of signals to me that they don't want to be in the business of like flip, signing guys just to get rid of them for assets. You know what I mean? And I think they want to be like a semi-competent team next year. And I think they want some stability in their franchise for their younger guys. I think um, obviously Nick Schmaltz and Clayton Keller are there for a term, but they have a lot of young guys that are going to be coming up. And they have a lot of young guys that played really significant minutes for them last year on the blue line, like Moser, and
Yeah,
probably Soderstrom is going to play in the NHL this season for them. And I think that like stability is super important because it's still a very young blue line. Moser is like 22, Soderstrom's like 21, 22. Jersey you mentioned is only 24. Like none of those guys really like are guys that you want playing 20 like you mentioned like 25 minutes a game talk because they're gonna get caved in. Sean Durzi's a power play merchant. Like if you make him play top pair right D, he's gonna get caved in 5-on-5 and is not gonna work. And I think that with that in mind, I think Arizona probably wants him for 2 or 3 years, because he's an established guy, he's a leader in the locker room, he's played very heavy minutes before. He's not great anymore, but he's above average, I would say, in terms of right defenseman in the NHL, and
yeah,
he won't be like a complete liability in those 24, 25 minutes a game. And in terms of Matt Dumba, I'm sure Dumba probably only wants her to be there for 1 year because then he can jump on the cap jump next off season.
yeah,
But I'm going to be honest. I just don't think that if I was his agent, I would tell him I don't think that even if he plays this year with Arizona, that he's going to have much of a market. Just look at John Klingberg, right? And Klingberg at least, the season before, he went into free agency, still had a decent offensive year. Dumba's offensive numbers the past couple seasons have not been, um, great. And even though he's not terrible defensively like Klingberg, he's not exactly great at it either, right?
yeah.
And I would think as his agent, it's like if a team is willing to offer you, 4.5, 4.25 for 2 or 3 years, give you that security, like I feel like it would be a good fit for them. Unless Dumba wants to play for a winning team, like that would make the entire difference, right? If Dumba doesn't
Hmm.
want to play for a loser like Arizona, then yeah, I mean, you know, and then ideally he gets moved at the deadline.
Right. All right, next player, Danton Heinen. Maybe you want to talk about Danton Heinen?
It's just your prototypical, bottom six player. I think he had like a really good year like 2 or 3 years ago with I think it was Anaheim, was it? Where he was super productive. I don't have his stats pulled up from on his hockey reference page pulled up, but he was pretty productive a couple years ago, and he hasn't really found that form since, hovering around like a 25 to 30 point guy, and that's fine value. But that kind of guy is not all that rare in the NHL, especially with some of these younger players coming up. So bomb six role. He's a good skater. He's got some offensive upside. Um,
Yeah.
Team that's trying to win and just wants like a depth option that plays fourth line for them.
Yeah, and our predictions here, kind of funny. We have the two Stanley Cup, well, the Stanley Cup finalists and the Stanley Cup champion. I chose Florida because when I look at Florida's roster, sure, their toxics is good. You got Barkov, Kachuk, Reinhardt, Bennett, Verhage. They just signed Rodriguez, and they still have Lucic. But their bottom, and sorry, Anton Lundell. How can I forget about Anton Lundell? Um, their bottom six isn't great. Nick Cousins doesn't have a lot of offense. I mean, I was
Unless
gonna
it's
say
against
that.
the Leafs, yeah.
Yeah. Seaver Lawrence, Kevin Stellan, Lomberg's okay. I mean, like Colin White and Eric Stahl were on their fourth line last year, and no disrespect to those guys, but if you're trying to win a Stanley Cup, they shouldn't be on your fourth line. And I think this would be a good fit for a guy like Danton Heine. Play in the bottom six of a team that will for sure make the playoffs. Um, they're stacked down the middle, so he might be playing with guy like playing with a guy like Anton Lindell on the on the third line. Sorry, he can get second power play time. He can easily crack 30 points with the Panthers, and then he can probably get a good payday in free agency next year, maybe at 2.5 by two. Um, I think Florida they just need more offense. I mean, most of their offense came from the top six. It's basically Matthew Kachuk created everything. So, I think it's a good bet for Florida to make. I think Heinen. I mean, you're playing in Miami. What's better than that, right? So, yeah, I like that fit a lot for Heinen.
All those reasons, I mean, obviously he's not gonna have the opportunity that he would
Yeah.
might have in Florida, but I think Vegas is just a much better team, and I think what they say about Stanley Cup champs, they get paid, right?
Hmm.
Like it doesn't matter where you play on a Stanley Cup champ team. If you play and you have like big moments, I mean, Dave Bolland won a cup as a third liner, and then Toronto decided to pay him like $6 million a year, and that was what like in
20, probably
like
2013, I think, or
yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
that was when the cap was like $75 million, right? Like he got paid, and I think Riley Smith going is going to be a pretty big loss for them,
Yeah.
and they cap flexibility to go out and get a guy like Patrick Kane or Tarasenko to replace that offense. So I think like some offensive upside that he we've seen can be productive offensively. 1 million won't cost that much. He's better than Paul Cotter in your lineup, right? Because that's who he'd be taking out.
Yeah.
And it's like if you win a Stanley Cup with this group, right? Like that could also be something that inflates.
Yeah. All right, next up we got Denny Malgin played with the Leafs in as this past season, 21 points in 65 games. Judging by his ice time, he was more of a low end third liner with his usage. I still like Denny Malgin. I still think he has a lot of skill. He was really good with Florida when with his time there. For some reason, it didn't work out in Toronto. I don't know why. And he seemed to be pretty okay with the Avs. So um, I'm actually shocked he's not signed by now because I think he's a really good player still.
Didn't really inspire anything as a Leafs fan watching him in Toronto. Like he was just a mat. Like those players where it's like you sometimes forget he's on the ice, you forget he's on your team. Like
Yeah.
Danny Malgin. Like he wasn't very noticeable because like he's not a big guy, right? So he's not gonna hit, right? And like unless you give him extended offensive zone opportunities, he's not really going to play is pretty average.
Hmm.
Um Still he's he can score goals, but I think for me that takes like 850K to a team that can afford to give him top
Yeah.
six, top nine ice time, and that's why I have Calgary in here because Calgary's a team that's kind of up against the cap, funny enough, because of some of these bad contracts that they've given out. But they're gonna offload a couple of those guys. It looks like Backlund might be gone, Lindholm might be gone. That's gonna open up opportunities, and I think Malgin, they need forwards because they just haven't done anything in free agency. Ben Jones, and that was like their entire UFA class. Like, God, okay, sure, I guess that was like last year when they signed like Kevin Rooney for 1.3 million or something. Like,
Yeah.
okay, bro, like what? But I think Malgin's got an opportunity to probably maybe play in the top nine on that team. And if they
Yeah.
move a couple of guys, maybe he even gets power play one time. As ridiculous as that may sound, because he does have that. I think Malgin would be very good as like a power play quarterback. I'm
Hmm.
still not sold on his impact 5-on-5, but like I feel like his skill set would shine on the power play. He just
Yeah.
never got that in Toronto because like number one, he was never gonna play on the power play one, and then number two, like as I mentioned, as many people probably know, the Leafs power play two since like 2015 has just been garbage
Yeah.
going.
And I have him going to Ottawa. They're gonna trade Alex DeBrincat. It's a matter of when at this point, not if. And I mean, they lost Alex Formenton last season, so like they need more depth, young scorers. Also because like a guy like Matthew Joseph, really regressed last year. Um, they still got to sign Shane Pinto. Maybe Riley Grigg, can make a good impact his rookie year. But if I'm Ottawa, I need to make good young cheap bets I think Malgin could be that guy. I think you can see a scenario where Malgin can slide up into the 10 cents top six for a while, and they have the players that can make him succeed. Tim Stutzla had an amazing year. Claude Giroux still great. You got Drake Batherson. You got Brady Tkachuk. So I can see Malgin really fitting in well with the Ottawa Senators in their top six, a one by one, and if he does well there, maybe he extends. I don't know, but I think the Sens just need more um, offensive players in the lineup, especially since, like I mentioned, they don't have Formenton anymore, and the downfall of Matthew Joseph.
So if Danny Malgin's in Ottawa's top six, I'm gonna be a happy camper next year. That's all I'm gonna say as a Leafs fan. Like, don't get me wrong, Danny, I love you, but oh man, I saw how Danny Malgin in the top six went. There's a reason why he only got 10 games with Tavares and Nylander a couple years ago.
Yeah,
Find a good partner for that line. The Leafs have been trying to find that two left wing for a couple of years now. Maybe we
yeah,
finally figured out with like a Domi or Bertuzzi.
we'll see. All right, next up, Paul Stastny.
But he's good defensively, good face-off guy. He's a vet, knows how to win.
Mm-hmm.
Time, uh, but valuable in the locker room. Um, a team like Toronto could use him, but he's not coming to Toronto. uh, so he kind of gives me like Ryan O'Reilly vibes. If Ryan O'Reilly was 4 years.
Yeah, and for our predictions, I'll go first. I'm gonna go with the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers are still looking for a depth forward. They want preferably a center, so they moved Derek Ryan to the wing. And I mean, in my opinion, I think Paul Stastny would be perfect. As you said, he's at this point he's a veteran, and I just think Paul Stastny wants to freaking win at this point. He hasn't won a cup in his career. Um, he's made it far. Vegas before. Carolina obviously just went to conference finals and got swept. I think at this point he just wants to win. I think he'd be willing to take a league min contract, and no, I think Stastny could provide a lot of influence on the younger guys at Edmonton. Um, and I mean, you just need like I know people hate when media members say this, but it's true. You do need these veterans in the locker room. They do help you get through the tough times. And this will probably be Statu's last year in the NHL. And why not do it with a team in Edmonton who will for sure make the playoffs, probably be top three in the conference, and get to be on the team with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. That's nice, right? That'd be nice.
Definitely could see that for sure. But I had a feeling that you were gonna put him there for Edmonton because I've heard you talking about Stastny to
Every day,
Edmonton.
every
Yeah,
day.
so that's why I didn't put Edmonton because I was like, I know Shea's gonna do it, and like let's not just talk the same team. Um, we try to keep it different. I went with Nashville because clearly Trotz is doing some weird shit up there. Like I don't know what
Yeah,
he's doing, but clearly he's not trying to lose games. You don't do that and Dalton spend like what was it like 30 like $20 million in free agency. Like I mean like Shen like it was weird. He did a lot of weird stuff and clearly Nashville's trying to win, but you're not gonna win with your current fourth line. It's like Smith, Sherwood, and like McCarron. Um, you Trotz likes his veteran guys. He's signed O'Reilly, he's signed Shen. So clearly he values those guys. And Stastny kind of fits into that locker room. I think culture seems to be a very important thing right now for Nashville. I think Trotz has really emphasized that. And I guess it makes sense because they're going to be playing with a couple of young guys, right? Cody Glass is going to be on the team. They Tommy Novak is pretty young. Afanaseyev, right?
yeah,
Tomasino is going to be with the team this year. You might see a guy like Kamel make the jump. So there's a lot of young guys on the team, and we've heard some negative things about Duchesne in the locker room, which might be why they just decide to buy him out.
mhm,
So in terms of just making that locker room better, and Man, like Nashville could be a playoff team next year because like they have UC Saros, and I'm not willing to count out any team that has a goalie like that in net because
Yeah.
like they can make a difference. And I mean Nashville's not an incompetent team. They've got some talent there. Their blue line is solid, and they have some underrated guys offensively. So I think that could be a playoff team, and I think if anything, I feel like Nashville might pay Stastny more. Right? I'm not sure he'd go for 825K. I just think that's what his market value is at this point, like
Yeah.
a vet min guy. But if Nashville really wants him, they might pay him like 1.5, 2 mil. They got the cap space to do it. So that's why I went with Nashville.
All right. Next up, Oscar Sundqvist. I mean, Sundqvist is like he's all right, I guess. Like he's ideally on your fourth line, but I guess he can't play on your third line. Had 21 points in 52 games with the Red Wings this past season. Got traded to Minnesota actually, and he had 7 points in 15 games. Playoffs only played one game, and he scored in that one game. I mean, he's probably your prototypical four flying power forward. You know what he's gonna bring. He's gonna hit a lot. He'll probably get you 10 goals a year. He's not the best defensively. I guess he can PK a lot. I mean, he's kind of there, and I don't know. I can see a few teams maybe going after him, but I'm not the biggest fan of Oscar Sundqvist.
I think Sundqvist is like, and I have him going to Toronto because I think that Toronto's going to be making a couple of moves. I think Nylander's gone. I think Murray's obviously gone. Muzzin's gonna go to LTIR, and they're gonna bring back Samsonov. I think like a guy like Timmins is gonna be gone. Lafferty is probably on the chopping block, and I think they're gonna clear up some cap, and they're gonna have a little bit of flexibility to fit a guy like this in. And I think with what Toronto's done in this free agency, I think Sundqvist fits what Treliving's vision of this team is, and that's a team that's just nastier to play against. I think
Mhm.
Sundqvist, like he had like a couple of good seasons. I think with St. Louis when he first joined the league, and obviously helped them win a cup. So like another cup champ, right? Like you can't go wrong with that. But he's a big guy, 6'3", 200 something pounds. Like he plays strong on the puck. He's not gonna score a ton, right? He's not incredible defensively, but he can penalty kill. But he's a nasty to play against, and I think a fourth line of Reeves, Kampf, and Sundqvist. I think that would be a tough line to play against. I think you'd always have to be looking over your shoulder as a defenseman. I'll say that much, right? Going into a corner, and if you're a forward, it's gonna be a tough time along the boards, right? Like they're
Yeah.
gonna lean on you. They're big guys. Um, and I think Sundqvist, I think he played pretty well in Minnesota. To be honest, I think he was like a 40 point pace with Minnesota on a winning team, playing third line minutes. So he's capable of a good team as a secondary guy. So again, it adds to the flexibility, right? He's a guy that's probably better on a fourth line for a team like Toronto. But if an injury happens, he can move. Like if Yarncroke goes out, for example. To be fair, I think Yarncroke might be on the trade block too. But if someone like that goes out, he's the guy who can slot in on the third line. And Toronto needs penalty killers right now. He can penalty kill, right? Toronto
Yeah.
lost like five penalty killers in free agency this year. That's why we signed fucking Dylan Gambrell, who doesn't do anything, literally anything but penalty kill. So I think Sundqvist would be a really good signing for Toronto.
And I went with the Rangers. Honestly, I didn't have a good reason for it. I just know the Rangers love their freaking gritty guys. So like, you know what? Sure, go to New York. I mean, they've already lost Kane and Tarasenko and a few others already. So yeah, I'm just gonna say the Rangers. And I think Laviolette. I think he is kind of a Laviolette player too. So yeah.
I agree. It's really ironic though that they're like we want to get Lafreniere and Kako going, and then the coach that they signed that they hire to like help those guys develop is fucking Laviolette. Like
Yeah.
like Jesus Christ, New York, please.
Next up, Jonathan Taves. I mean, this will be like a minute, not even. I mean, he's probably gonna retire. He's already done everything you can as a player. Three-time Cup champ, won a Conn Smythe, has won gold with Canada in the World Champions millions of times. He's won gold at the Olympics twice, I think. Um, yeah, hell of a career. Um, maybe some captain issues from 2010, 2011 we won't talk about. But no, just go retire. His health's not even great anyways. There's no reason for you to come back. You're well accomplished. Just ride off into the sunset.
I think this is it for Taves. I think a team like if he really wants to play, there'll be suitors, right? Just like how there'll be suitors for Stastny. But and he was good like 2 years ago too. Like he still was like a 40, 50 point guy 2 years ago. But it's just I don't know. I just think his body's so broken down at this point. I just don't think it's worth it. You don't have anything left to prove. You know, you won everything that there is to be won. Um, said and enjoy.
Yeah.
Despite the spotty record as a captain that we won't mention again, he's still one of the best defensive centers in Canadian hockey history. So
Oh, for sure. Next up, Phil Kessel, three-time Cup champ, my guy. Um, I mean, he also has the Iron Man streak still going, so good for him. Um, Phil could still easily play in this league, man. Like he had 14 goals, 36 points. Sure, defense isn't in his vocabulary, but he can still score, and he'll be cheap. And you know what? The team I have him going is the Pittsburgh Penguins. We know Kessel can fit well in Pittsburgh under Mike Sullivan, and Pittsburgh still needs to correct the mess that Ron Hexel left behind. They need more goal scorers, more depth in the lineup, and Kessel will easily provide that one by one. And I think the fans will love him back. He loves it there. I think for me, this is a no-brainer.
the reason I wouldn't do it, I wouldn't see it happening is he's not a Dubas type player. That's like my only reservation. Like Dubas just has this weird infatuation of signing gritty, undersized bottom six players for depth. Like it's weird. Like Nieto he signed, Andreas Janssen he signed. There's another name I forget. Like I don't know. Dubas is just weird. Like he always signed like Malgin is a guy he wanted. Like he likes these like undersized forwards with like
Mm-hmm.
maybe untapped potential, but like no, not really. But like from like a story perspective, from a fan base perspective, I think Kessel would love to be back in Pittsburgh, and we know that he works with Crosby or Malkin, right? Like
Yeah,
they won what 2 cups with him,
yeah,
so for sure. I have him going to the Rangers just because they lost goal scoring in Tarasenko and Kane. They don't have the cap to bring either of those guys back. Kessel can score goals. It's as simple as that. And
yeah,
he doesn't play defense, but neither does Kane. So
yeah.
I
Exactly.
mean, he's just a cheaper, slightly less good version of Kane, but probably much less expensive.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that's that for
Um,
Phil.
Next up, another guy I am shocked hasn't been signed. I thought this would be a day one sign. Tomas Tatar had almost a 50-point year with New Jersey. I'm pretty sure he's playing third line too. So that's also incredible. Like I don't know why he hasn't been signed. He's a good top six player. And it's not like he's old. He's only 32. Um yeah, and it's do you want to add on? Sorry.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Leafs signed him just because he's a playoff choker, just like the rest of our team. Um, sorry, I just had to throw that in there. You continue.
Yeah, he only had one goal in 12 games this entire playoff run, so you're not kind of wrong there. But yeah, like Tatar, we know what he is, right? He can play well defensively enough, and he's a good 5v5 contributor. He can play on your power play, like he can do anything you want in this league. And he'll probably be cheap because we're 8 days into free agency. And the team I have him going to is a team that's kind of done nothing yet this offseason. That's Minnesota. They have 8.2 million in cap space. They have to re-sign Brandon Duhaime, who won't cost a lot. They got to re-sign Kalen as Addison. Once again, won't cost a lot. They got to sort of Phil Gustafson, but like, man, I think they need more goal scoring in this lineup because
Quist that they lost in free agency
yeah,
that they got for super
exactly,
cheap last year. Yeah.
exactly. And Venkos was such a good fit for them, man. Um, you know, Ryan Hartman, Ryan Hartman regressed obviously. Marcus Foligno really regressed. I'm pretty sure a few. He had like a 40-point year, 23-goal year. Then this past year went back to his 21-point self. Um, in Minnesota, man, just you have to make it up. Just stop being mediocre. Holy shit! Like, just like, I mean, maybe Tatar doesn't push you over the edge, but like, you can't run it back with the same group. Add to it, man, please.
Twist. And like Gustafson, like he was very good last year for Minnesota, but you know how it is with some of these goalies. Like they're hot one year, they're cold the next. Like you might not. There is a scenario where Minnesota trots out the same team next year, but Gustafson
Yeah.
might be at risk of missing the playoffs. Then, like a team like
Mm-hmm.
Nashville might jump them. St. Louis, no,
Talk shit.
might jump them. Uh, and this team I think fits well too is Calgary, for the same reason that I thought what could have been a good fit for Calgary. I think Toffoli Tatar could be a good fit because he'd basically be a cheaper Toffoli replacement, right?
Yeah.
Like he's not as good as Toffoli, right? And that's why New Jersey trade for him and then let Tatar go. But like I think that could be a fit there. You can give him 50 points, won't cost that much. You
Yeah.
know, Calgary might be a team depending on who they since they have so many unrestricted free agents next year. They might be a team that can actually pay him longer term. I just put 1 year just to be conservative, but they might give him more term. And if you're Tatar, clearly teams don't want you, man. Like I don't know why, like Shay mentioned, but
I'd
clearly
love
teams
to
don't
that.
want you.
I would love Tomas Tatar.
We'll take you. We'll take you. Hey, look. Like some guy on Twitter made like that really good post about the Leafs. Like you come to Toronto, bro. That pay bump the next season goes crazy.
That's
All
true.
right, you come here for like 1.5 million. You're gonna walk in a free agency next year. You're gonna get paid 5 mil, guaranteed.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, you can make
uh,
the same argument for McKinnon and McDavid and those guys, right?
yes, but we haven't seen the proof yet though,
That's
because
true. Yeah.
all the guys that have come in are like been signed long term and brought back by Edmonton, right? They haven't
Tyson
left.
Berry.
Like yeah. I mean Tyson Berry might get yeah, but like Hyman signed long term. I mean, he's been very good.
Yeah.
Kane extended, right? Like hasn't really worked out for those on those top two lines. It's probably funny enough your two young guys, which is Yamamoto and JP,
Which is
right?
ironic to hell.
Tell, but like clearly they work with vets, right? They
Yeah.
work with Hyman, they work with Kane. Tatar would work with Edmonton, I think, but I think there'll be a team like Calgary or Minnesota that'll be willing to pay him
Yeah.
close to market value, whereas that's not in the cards for Edmonton or Toronto.
Yeah, for sure. Next up, I mean, we list them as honorable mentions because, like, if they're gonna come back, it's Boston. Like, there's no other way around it. So that's why there aren't on this top 10, so we can squeeze in some more guys. But yeah, if Bergeron and Krejci come back, it's Boston 1 year league minimum, and uh, and I mean they'll probably then win the cup next year because this league can never be happy. Um,
Y'all have been good for long enough. Just be bad, please. We already
right.
have we already have Buffalo coming up in our division. Okay, we don't need you to stay good. Like, jeez.
Next up, Vlad Tarasenko. Um, I mean, we know what Tarasenko is at this point. I can't believe he was 31 though. Holy crap, the time flies. Um, is he's not his 30-goal self as he was previous years, but he can still be a very good top six contributor. And I am gonna go with the team that's been rumored to sign him for like 3 days now, and for some reason it's not done yet. Carolina, and I mean like, listen, every year Carolina somehow improves their team. I don't know how. The Tony DeAngelo trade is probably gonna get done tomorrow. Um, and like the biggest thing for Carolina is that they can't score. They have a lot of good forwards, but they can't finish. And sure, I know I just mentioned that Tarasenko hasn't scored 30 goals, or he isn't his 30 goals self as he used to be, but I don't know. I think he can maybe regain his form in Carolina.
Alongside
Maybe.
Aho and Svechnikov, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, like, you look at their defense. I mean, Orlov, Slavin, Burns, Shea, Pesci, Tony D. I mean, there's a lot of good puck movers up there, and those puck movers can also play defense. So, I mean, I think this is a great fit for Tarasenko, and he's always wanted to stay in the metropolitan area. So yeah, 5 times 3. It's a bit of a discount, but if Tarasenko wins his second cup, I don't think he cares.
Sure. The only reason I didn't go with Carolina is because I feel like it should have happened by now if he was going to Carolina. Like it's been reported for 3 days, and but then for some reason he fired his agent, and now they're restarting the entire process. And now we're hearing Ottawa wants Tarasenko, but the only reason they haven't paid Tarasenko is because the Brinkett isn't getting traded, and they want to bring him as the Brinkett replacement. And like, I mean, like it's just a whole mess, but like it kind of makes sense. Like they
It
want a
does.
goal scorer, as you mentioned earlier. With I think you were talking about was it
Yeah, Malgin.
yeah. So they need a replacement for the Brinkett. Ottawa clearly wants to win. That's why you don't get a guy like Giroux last year. And you don't trade for a guy like the Brinkett if you're not trying to compete.
Or Chikrin.
Or yeah, if you're not trying to compete. So they're definitely trying to compete. So Tarasenko, 3 4 years, like he's 31. I'll take him to 35. And it'll be it might be a bad contract in that last year of the deal. But Ottawa, like Ottawa run with Carlson, and then they moved off of him hasn't been the same team, and they haven't had. When's the last time Ottawa made the playoffs? Like
That
20.
year, 2017.
So like they need to get back there. It's been 6 years, right? And doing otherwise, like they might not get there. Period, because
Yeah.
Toronto's gonna stay good. Buffalo's on the come up. Detroit's on the come up. Florida is gonna be good. Just like they're gonna be like in the conversation. Like they'll be fighting for a wild card spot. Boston is regressing, but Tampa I think is still gonna be good. Like if you don't make it this year, like you might miss that window because then you go straight from Boston, Tampa, Toronto being the three dominant teams to Toronto, Buffalo, Detroit being the dominant teams, and then with all three of those teams still with all their best players either entering their prime or in the middle of their prime, right?
Yeah.
And otherwise, it's gonna be tough to compete. And like, you don't want to like go through that rebuild, get Stutzla, and get all these young players to just top out at like a wild card team.
Hmm.
They need to add pieces. I'm and like Corpusalo was an interesting bet in that. I'm pretty sure we'll do an off-season grade in a couple of weeks when some of these bigger names go out. I'm not a
Yeah.
huge fan of it. So for Tarasenko,
Also, geez, 2017 was 6 years ago, huh? That's that's that's
for Sens
that's
fans.
wild, man. And the last number one free agent is another Ranger, Patrick Kane. I don't think he's good anymore, but I am. I mean, what else is there to say? We know how good Patrick Kane was in his prime. We know that he might. He's probably at this point a low end second liner, power play specialist. Um, his defense not great to say the least. Um, you know, as a prediction, we know he's going to miss the start of next year. I think he's going to be ready in December. I think he goes back to the Rangers. That was the only team he wanted to go to at the deadline, and even if the Rangers did sign, who the hell did I say? I said they're gonna sign Sundqvist. The right side is still garbage, so I think he'll, yeah,
Oh,
for like Goudreau, that's it.
wow,
Dude, it's
wow,
off.
that's bad. Wow, that's
It's
bad.
awful. Like Wheeler, like that's that's it, man. They have nobody on that right side, and I think he'll sign it for cheap, a 1 year deal. I think he's gonna retire there. To be honest with you, um, yeah, I don't even think any other team would even touch Patrick Kane to begin with. I don't even think he wants to leave New York. Honestly, I think that's the only team he's gonna stay with or play for. Hmm.
Isn't coming back until like probably like November, December. And you know what Colorado's gonna have in November, December? they're gonna have that nice $7 million LTIR cap relief from Gabriel Landeskog. So they're gonna have cap to work with, and I think if you're Kane, you're not gonna sign this offseason. Their season, see what teams are doing well, see what team gives you the best chance of winning a Stanley Cup. And I think Colorado is going to be good next year, and LTIR can probably afford to pay him more than the Rangers can. But we get to play with Nick
Yeah.
Colton, I'm guessing, is the second line.
Okay.
Um, that's a pretty good second line, right? Because I think Colton is good enough defensively. I think Nichushkin's underrated as a two-way guy, so I think they can cover for him. And I think on the power play one, and you put a power play one of McKinnon, Kane, Rantanen, McCall, like that's kind of nasty. Like I know Kane's not his 35, 40 goal self anymore, but like on that power play, like he you know what I mean?
Oh
Like
yeah.
he's still got the offensive instincts, and I think if he wants to ring chase, I think Colorado's for.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense actually. And yeah, that does it for a list. Yeah.
Like we mentioned, in a couple of weeks probably, when my finals are over and I'm back at home and some of these other players get signed on this list, and we see what Toronto does, we'll probably do an off-season grades video. We come out the last week or so just because nothing has happened.
Nothing's happened. Nothing at all.
But if you enjoy the video, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yep.